Whenever you're ready.
I'm Comiskey, and this is my senior project. So, what I wanted to do was to create an original piece of music for the school band with the limited writing knowledge I had at the time. What I mean by that is on things such as notation and music theory, which is the study of concepts and compositional methods involved in the creation of music. Very simply, theory is very much the boring part of creating music. However, since a basic understanding of it is required to make your own compositions, I thought that this would be a good way to get started. I chose this project because by this year, the end of high school, I had also been at the end of my near decade-long tenure in the school band, which I began in 4th grade in the percussion section. And throughout those years, I actually learned very little about actually reading and writing music, as those things were beyond my station at the time. However, I've always wanted to write my own material, and choosing this as my project was to be a massive undertaking, evidently. But even knowing that it would be a big project from the get-go, I'm not sure I quite understood how much work would need to be put into it in total. Firstly, I would be starting completely from scratch, starting from nothing, and also trying to make something new and original, and having to write these parts for instruments which I had a very crude understanding of their respective notation, and having to, by the end of the year, put all these parts together and have the piece finalized. It became pretty clear that this was going to be one of the hardest things I've ever done. I hope to, for one, expand my knowledge on writing and theory. There would also be an element of self-achievement I would get from this. Just being able to have this piece, this composition, which I have written, the first of its kind in this particular format for me. And to have that as something that I could essentially use to lay down the woodwork for future projects that I would do. And most importantly, I think it would be something to leave to the band, since I had, over the years, given so much of myself and so much effort into that program. I'd always put all of my effort into preparation for whenever a performance was around the corner, regardless of how small my role would be in that performance. I chose it over playing sports, and it's been the longest thing I've committed to in this school. More on the band program itself. It has been struggling for many years now. It's been low on members, funding, and overall promotion. Money that used to be allocated more fairly and equally among all those programs is now disproportionately put towards athletics and other various programs. And as a result of that, for one, a lot of our equipment in the band room and in the chorus room, since those are both part of the music department, a lot of it is severely outdated, in need of repair or replacement. But I think the main issue that we face is the lack of members. As you can see in the picture on the top, which is the Millis band, there's roughly 15, 16 kids in that photo, as opposed to Midway on the bottom, which you might notice there's quite a lot more kids participating in that ensemble. Hopefully this is an issue that will be solved in the coming years, since unfortunately next year some specific spots for instruments in the band will be completely vacant, despite the efforts of all of us to bring in more kids over the years. My mentor for this project was Janice Norton, who was the Millis High School band teacher. She also teaches music in elementary and middle school. She was very supportive of my project from the very beginning. She was a great help to me in writing the notation for the parts, assisting me in working out any remaining kinks in the parts to ensure that they could all be read and performed by concert band musicians. We also had a lot of meetings over Zoom where we look over what I've written so far and just work out the issues one by one, which proved to be one of the most useful things I had done in the interest of completing the project. Initially, how I went about it was by recording all of these parts on a digital audio workstation, which is a program with hundreds of different instrument and sound samples. In this case, I would be recording parts for trumpet, saxophone, clarinet, and piccolo, which is a smaller, higher pitched flute. And once I was happy with that recording, it would then be time to begin the writing and transcription process, which is the much more boring, time-consuming, and most grueling part of this process. And the main goal being to make the piece official and finalize it by the end of the year. All of this was easier said than done, since it wasn't until about February until I was finally happy with the initial recording I've been working on since October. My research in the beginning was very much centered around inspiration and the creative process. Just a part of the process of which you're coming up with the initial ideas and you're brainstorming these ideas and figuring out which ones you want to use. And once you have a rough understanding of those ideas, you then start structuring the song. I did have a lot of ideas floating around to begin with before I committed to doing this as my project. And then once I knew the overall form of what I wanted this piece to be, it was time to start doing the notation and conceiving the composition. The software I used primarily to write these parts was a program called MuseScore, which was recommended to me by a graduated band student named John Weir. His project, when he was a senior, happened to be basically the same as mine. He also wrote an original piece. Not only did he write this piece, but he was able to have the band perform it at the end of the year with him as the conductor. He is a music teacher in his own right, and he has a lot more experience in these things than I do, so he was able to offer me a lot of useful tips on this software. He uses it with his own students and when he writes his own material. What it looks like now. So I can say that the piece itself is finished. Unfortunately, it didn't come out perfect in any way, and it didn't come out the way I originally intended. As a consequence of tight scheduling, a lot of things I had to push aside or leave out. The 4 parts I wrote are showed here. However, these are the parts that I worked on since the beginning, the ones that I collaborated with Ms. Norton on, and the ones that she also had some of the band members sight read, which is to look at a piece blindly and attempt to play what you're reading. For my successes, I definitely can say I have a better understanding of theory. I enjoyed writing it a lot, especially in the beginning stages, because it's always fun, just the brainstorming part, starting from ground zero. I didn't enjoy the transcription part as much. I am happy getting as far as I did in the end, and I think I consider one of the biggest feats of this project to be the fact that the parts were sight read by band members and played a few times, since one of my ideas at the beginning was maybe I can have this piece performed at the end of the year if it's completed on time, but as time went on it became clear that that wasn't going to be a possibility. For my failures and obstacles, I've already said the finished product eventually turned out to be just basically a shadow of what was originally planned. Technical limitations as far as software, whether that was the restrictions of the software or just me not knowing it well enough when faced with a specific issue. Technological difficulties as far as equipment not working or breaking, and me having to buy new equipment, which I had to do a couple of times. I've already mentioned the stressful schedule and how intense that got, especially towards the end of the year. And all of these things together caused a lot of general doubts on my part, just on how well the project was going, whether or not it would be completed on time, and whether or not the composition would be functional. I can say that now, as a result of doing this project, I have a much better understanding of reading and writing music. I can say that I have an original piece written by me. And most importantly, I got to dedicate a lot of time doing what I enjoy, which is writing and creating. And hopefully this can show kids who are contemplating whether or not to join the band what is possible when you dedicate enough effort into the program. I would say thank you to Mrs. Norton, who was obviously my main help on this project, to John Lear, who offered me a lot of valuable tools and insight on projects of this nature, Mr. Carter, who guided me along the way with helpful advice on research and other things, and to the band students who read my parts and helped me to make sure that they worked. We're excited, and if we have time, I have a short video.
Please, yeah, yes, definitely. Sick, yeah. Yeah, look,